Our next conversation is with two learner-centered educators and leaders from Virginia who are joining the edX team to launch this portrait work with schools. Dr. Pam Moran is a former superintendent of Albemarle County in Virginia. She has worked at every level of education and leads the state's innovation network, bringing the Virginia Portrait of a Graduate to life across schools. And Ira Socol is the former Chief Technology and Innovation Officer in Virginia Public Schools. He is a national leader in universal design and accessibility technology. Together with a colleague, they have authored Timeless Learning, and we're thrilled to be talking. Hi, Pam. Hi, Ira.
Good evening, Janine, although we're in Virginia, so it's good evening here.
Good evening, Janine. It's later here than there, but we're all good. It's good to be with you again.
It's wonderful to be with you all too. We were so lucky to spend some time together in person at the Together convening a few weeks ago, where we launched this conversation to our community. I'd like to share with Nevada that the edX team has been drawn to your leadership early in our research because of the very organic and grassroots way you've all helped lead education evolution in Albemarle County, and also because of, Pam, your leadership with the VALEN, the Virginia's for Learners Innovation Network, and just this concept of how do we get to yes with our work. So for years, you both have been doing the boots on the ground level work as district leaders with schools to get young people to be more engaged, more connected, and to do learning that they find interesting and relevant. And it's not always an easy thing at first, but it's something that resonates with so many people. What can you tell us about that work?
Well, I would just jump in and say that for me, this has been my life's work, really starting back at the point in time where I was a young teacher and focusing on how do we create environments that really ignite learning for every learner so that they can find their passion, their interest, their energy and enthusiasm for learning, with the idea that all of our kids are one day going to go to work. They're going to live in homes. They're going to live in communities. And the better that we get inside our schools at helping our young people develop the competencies and skill sets and knowledge they need to be successful in life, the better off we are going to be as a society, at the state level, the nation level, and even across the world. So it's been kind of a life's passion for me to do this work.
For me, Janine, it's been a different path, but it has also been a life's passion because I spent my childhood and adolescence as and among learners who were failing in school and seemed on a path to nowhere. What I've learned through my life and through various careers and the quarter century or so I've spent in public education is that we can really expand the universe of who succeeds in school and who can be on that path to a good life to include every child. We have evidence of that. We've sort of proved it along the way. And we've seen it, and we're thrilled that Nevada is committing to this.
That's great. We've talked a little bit about what a portrait is and what it can be together in the convening, and I just wanted to highlight a few things. And we've talked about this concept that a learning portrait needs to reflect reality and the recognition that our world is in a constant state of change. Schools and learning need to be in that same constant state of change, and that the very durable skills and the knowledge that young people can take with them through their lives needs to be something that we're explicitly cultivating through learning experiences. You all facilitated a very engaging and thought-provoking multi-hour session on the second day of our convening, and you walked participants through some really critical ideas. You explained what a portrait is and why it mattered, and you really helped connect it to this idea of, we have standards, and when we build a portrait, we can become more clear about the skills and the mindsets that need to be a part of who young people are while they're learning. And then there's these things, these competencies, which our friends at KnowledgeWorks are going to build for and with Nevada, that really help get clear on what we're going to do. Can you kind of like just in your way that is so wonderful, talk about how those three things interface: the portrait, the competencies, and the knowledge?
I think what's essential, Janine, is that while we need to grow up knowing things and we need to grow up with specific skills, we also need bigger aspirations for our children and for our society. And the portrait is our aspirations. It puts us into a mode where we understand that children have to be more than the sum of those academic parts. They have to be able to move into the world and be great citizens, great family members, great workers, great community members. They have to move our world forward in the way we hope, so that they will live better lives than we have lived. And that the portrait, by defining those dispositions, those things of nature, those things that glue the skills and knowledge together into something that helps the student live a lifespan of learning and contributing, is what the portrait does. And what a portrait does when it's in operation, what we saw in Virginia, is that it helps us find our way to help our children move.
I would say as succinctly as possible that standards in every state, I think, in the nation now has standards that they've defined of what they want their students to know. And so at the level of the most foundational part of the work that we do is, what do we want our kids to know? What do we want them to think about? What do we want them to interact with in terms of knowledge that represents what adults think is important for kids to learn? The competencies really layer in, what do we want kids to do with that? How do we want our kids to think about being able to think critically, to be able to argue persuasively, to be able to create and think in ways that really move work forward in really inventive, imaginative ways? All of the things that we would define, that we would say, so this is what kids need to do with the knowledge. The portrait at some level of a learner really does say, who do we want our children to become? What do we want our children to be able to not just know and do, but who will they be as human beings when they graduate? And so when you put that all together, what you basically are creating is a roadmap that helps everyone navigate to the same destination. It gives us a North Star, so to speak, as a portrait. And I think that what's really important about that is, too often we, whether we're in different kinds of boats on a river and we're trying to all get to the same place, but maybe some of us are turned around and going in the wrong direction because we don't know how to paddle, or whether we're in a company and we're all trying to achieve the same mission in terms of the work that we're doing. And some people know that mission and some people do not. What the portrait does for us in education is it gives us a destination. It gives us a roadmap. It doesn't mean that we're all in the same boat or that we all are moving at the same pace, but we are going together towards that work, which we believe is going to be the fuel that helps our young people graduate, knowing, doing, and becoming the people who will really advance our nation, our state, our communities, and even help us maybe to be better in our own homes.
I love that. I feel like this stays with people. We've been having this conversation for a bit, and I want to maybe try to make it a little bit more clear what happens differently in learning and in terms of student outcomes and in terms of what young people actually do in school as a result of having a portrait. You all told some really great stories when you were here from your work, and one of the stories that really continues to resonate with me, I think, Pam, I think you initiated it. It was your superintendent. I think you were the assistant superintendent at the time, and he came back from like an Apple conference and had this realization that like every kid needed to build a website, and there was a larger kind of context that he was responding to. And then you in doing and having these conversations, I think it was with the lifelong competencies, learning competencies that were developed, there really started to be a tangible shift in the way in what learning looked like and what it felt like. So could you talk a little bit more about that for us to kind of wrap our heads around what it really means?
All over the country, people had started to really think about what it looked like to set standards for young people. So in Nevada, whether you were growing up in Elko or Clark or Washoe, that there were common sets of standards that would say, these are what we believe the young people of Nevada need to really know in order to be successful at learning what we adults in Nevada believe is important. The same thing happened in Virginia, it happened in Utah, it happened in Vermont. It was going on all over the country. And then we had this thing called the No Child Left Behind Act of 2001, which really set in motion some high levels of accountability for every state. I was a superintendent who came back from an Apple executive conference, and he walked into our cabinet meeting on a Monday morning and kind of pounded his hand on the desk and said, I want every student in Albemarle County to be able to make an iMovie. And we're all looking at each other going, what's an iMovie? But when we started to unpack what he was really talking about, what he was really trying to communicate is we do not want to become a test prep machine in our schools, where the only thing that we're worried about is whether our kids are going to pass a test or not. We really want our kids to be successful on multiple measures, but we do not want to neglect that our kids need to learn to analyze, to evaluate, to synthesize, to apply knowledge, and be able to develop competencies, whether it's the kind of life skills that really lead kids to be to lead healthy and fit lifestyles when they graduate. So thinking about the physical domains of learning, where people become healthy individuals and sustain that for a lifetime, or whether it's kids graduating with the capability to plan and conduct research. And one of the things that we started to do was to work with our teachers and to get them to really test bed, how would we build out units that really get at higher levels of work, deeper learning, if you want to use one of the terms of today, that really take kids beyond just learning what they need to pass a state test. What we really went after was bringing teachers together. They built some units, piloted units, came together after a year of really hard work and said, here are 12 ways that our kids were learning competencies that are incredibly important for them to be successful in school, as well as after they leave school to be successful in the workforce, as citizens, and in their communities and in their homes. And so we went after that. And one of the things that started to emerge is that when you start to think about whether it's through that competency lens or that portrait of a Nevada learner lens, that when people start to really wrap around that, they start to ask questions about how do we spend our resources, our budget? How do we really make sure that our teachers are getting the professional learning opportunities they need to be able to teach in ways that are deep and really take kids beyond just learning the basics, but to really go to those higher levels of learning? How is it that we really think about what we're going to assess? How do we really create assessments in our local divisions or districts, as it is in Nevada, that will really show our parents what our kids are learning to do, not just what they know? So all of a sudden, each piece of the puzzle of what happens inside the system starts to align.
Well, and one of the things that's important is, how does this change the everyday life of learners, of children, of students, so that they are gaining every day from all of their time in school the kind of experiences that help them move forward? And I can give you a quick succession. If we had kindergartners who could Skype with equivalent age kids in Ireland and discuss how holidays worked in the two countries and question each other about things like this, they could become fourth graders who could challenge the classification of simple machines, not just learn what those were, but actually think about what they meant deeply and engage with experts around the world with their questions, who would then turn into middle school students who might build a replica of the original telegraph using the original documents from the 1840s to figure out how people figured this out, or who could launch a high altitude balloon and at the same time negotiate with the airport tower at Dulles Airport outside Washington to determine whether they were in flight paths or not, and finally become high school students who could build things like an autonomous sailboat that could sail itself across Boston Harbor, which for at least one of those students involved in that turned into a autonomous rescue robot that he built in college. So because we believed in this, in our lifelong learning competencies, which was our portrait, because we believed that we wanted kids to know, to be competent, to be empathetic, to be able to research and communicate and work with each other. We knew we were on a path when we saw these things happening in our schools, and it simplified our decision making. We knew what to encourage, we knew what to support, and we saw the results in action.
And add to that, we saw the work as being work that should be challenging and interesting for every student in the system, not just for some. And so the student in one of our rural areas who learned how to program Arduinos in order to be able to create a system that would allow him to feed his family's shed of multiple chickens early in the morning was an example of a child in a rural area who was using the same skill sets as a student who maybe was going to go into engineering at Virginia Tech and build an autonomous sailboat. So what we were really finding is that we had a lot of kids out there who had talents and capabilities that sometimes get underestimated because they come from a demographic like a rural demographic or an economically disadvantaged demographic. And the more that we built out this kind of work around knowledge, competencies, and portrait work all lining up together, the more students we started to see as highly capable learners that otherwise might have been lost in the shuffle of the way that work happens at a traditional school.
As I'm listening and I'm reflecting on what you both have spoken about, Ira, when you started speaking, I was like, gosh, that sounds great. And I was thinking it was sort of theoretical, but you were actually citing examples of things that happened during the learning trajectory of these kids alongside, because of those competencies aligned to your portrait. And so I think those are really great examples of what is possible when we ask some different questions and have a different sense of clarity about what we're working towards and why. I'm a fan of your book, Timeless Learning. It's an exploration of what it means to look at learning through the lens of just how humans do it and how schools can better weave that reality into the ways that they operate. And I know that you're both working on an upcoming book on the concept of co-design. And both of those concepts of timeless learning and co-design are really inherent in the process that we've built out for the portrait and starting to bring it to life. Can you say a little bit more about how these ideals can help move our thinking and our actions forward in schools for young people?
I think that one of the things, and Pam just mentioned it, is this is for every child everywhere, and it's for every county in Nevada, no matter what the circumstances are, because human learning begins wherever that human is at that moment. It doesn't begin at some arbitrary point. that we establish. It begins where people are. And the reason this looks different every place, even though the same concepts are in play, is when we asked rural kids what they wanted to do to improve their school, and they talked about how they wanted to make their cafeteria better, to make their day better, they immediately brought up a construction project that they could do, that most of those children had the basic skills to establish. But what happened through that construction project, which was quite remarkable to see, was this became an amazing master class in middle school mathematics and in communication skills. That would look different at each place we went. And one of the advantages we had where we worked in Virginia is we had every conceivable demographic. We had every kind of community. We had incredible rural poverty, incredible suburban wealth, urban schools with 80 languages in them. We had all these situations going, and our determination was that there are no humans who can't learn. There are no humans who can't succeed. They can all go the kind of places they need to go if we're willing to meet them where they are and to start giving them the kind of freedoms humans need to learn their own way. In the same way, this works for communities, because if you're in Elko County or you're in Mineral County, the opportunities, the baseline things, the measures, the skills kids bring to school, the knowledge they bring to school is different than if they're in urban Clark County. It's the nature of it. Nobody knows less. People know different, and they can move forward from there.
There are some critical ways that this kind of work can change a group of people working together. And I've seen it happen at the district level. I've seen it happen at the school level. I've even seen this work happen at the classroom level. But most importantly, I've also seen it happen at the state level, not just in Virginia, but South Carolina, Georgia, Kentucky, Utah, Wyoming. Nevada is embarking on this work, Vermont, Wisconsin, Michigan, all over the country. There are states really wrapping around. How do we really unleash the contagious creativity that's inherent in human beings? And that means it's inherent in the educators, in parents, in students, in the business community.
Yeah.
And that when we unleash that contagious creativity, we start to have ideas pop up that are ones that maybe we would have never thought of before individually. But when we come together and convene and really form teams working together, suddenly there is a level of innovation that starts to feel a lot more like what you might find in a highly developed organizational culture in a company, an international company that invest in research and development. To me, what I really see coming forth in Nevada is a willingness to really invest in R&D at the level of communities across the state, with the idea that when those communities are sharing what they're doing, building out their ideas, not in a cookie cutter way, but based on what their communities need, all of a sudden you're no longer reinventing the wheel, you're setting a flywheel in motion. And it takes time to get a flywheel moving, but once you do and it flies, the momentum behind that is just remarkable. And I've seen it really pop up in places all over the country. And I think that Nevada has all of the right ingredients to make it work. It's got an economy that's on fire. It's got educators that are really seeing themselves as taking that next step. It's got communities of parents who want for their kids as great an education as they can possibly get because they know a good education matters. And so for me, Nevada is really poised to lead and take this work to a next step that actually is going to inform other states in the country about what's possible And I just see that Nevada is really poised to take on this work in an amazing way that will lead to a capability of learning that hasn't maybe existed before. So that's where I really see this process is taking the state.
Yeah. We're going to be working alongside educators in the next few months with a draft portrait to start to explore it, provide feedback on it, start to understand what that can look like. And as you said, Pam, like that sort of like networked approach to learning, sharing what's working, sharing the different ways that we're building out pathways towards that portrait is what's important. It also builds that sense of commitment and excitement about what's possible. And I think that really is beautifully put what the power of the portrait can be. So thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to continuing this journey with you both. You can stay updated on the process, access tools to host your own conversations, and share the results with us, and follow along with the monthly virtual talks about the portrait at portrait.nvfutureoflearning.org. Again, that's portrait.nvfutureoflearning.org.